Hit Wicket is the cricket game backed by Harsha Bogle and me, so you know it's full of nerd energy. This strategic cricket game isn't just about frantic tapping. You make decisions based on how cricket actually works. You've got to set a batter up, right? And you can't hit a six from the first ball. Hit Wicket knows all that, and they made a game that makes it work with a few gaming twists in there as well. So play, build, and manage your team, because you are the batter, the bowler, the coach, the selector. I mean, you're basically everything in this game, right? And there's no ads on Hit Wicket. So download it for free for mobile and unleash your inner cricket legend. Hit Wicket is the cricket game backed
ladies and gentlemen. Estelle.
Sorry about that.
You have to switch us as well, right? I'm Behram, you're Estelle Vasudevan. So switch us up on the live feed. But
Sorry, guys.
Anyway, hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Overthrows podcast on Good Areas Live. I'm Behram Kazi, who you can find at Def Mango on Twitter. And with me is Estelle Vasudevan, who you can find at Estelle_Vasude, the number 1 on Twitter. And as promised, we're back once again. And we were live like 2 days ago. This will keep happening more frequently because we'll be reacting to the cricket. And this particular live session is only going to be focused on Sri Lanka's women, their limited overs tour of Ireland. The 2-match T20I series, Estelle, it ended in a 1-1 stalemate. But then Ireland won the 3-match ODI series 2-1. And tell me, what does this mean for Sri Lanka's automatic qualification chances for the Women's ODI World Cup next year?
I mean, they're in a pretty good position. They're in at number 4 at the moment, ahead of India. But of course, they're one of 2 teams that have completely finished their quota of 24 games in this cycle, right? So you have teams like New Zealand, West Indies, even Bangladesh, who still have the opportunity, theoretically or mathematically, to go through to the next round. It would have been, they could have confirmed their spots if things had gone according to what many people believed it would have. Like, a lot of people were expecting a 3-0 win for Sri Lanka, particularly given their form coming into the series and Ireland not having won any games in the Women's Championship so far. But Ireland was superb in their home turf, and they first time appearing in the cycle, they win a series. It was just excellent going. But Sri Lanka, of course, still very much in the running to get in, but things could change with the coming series for West Indies and particularly New Zealand.
Well, I would actually back Sri Lanka versus both of those teams, given their recent success. But explain to me, and I wasn't following this series super closely. I've looked at it here and there, but I haven't actually watched any of the action, so I'll just be picking your brain. Chamari was back for the ODI series. She played all 3 games. She was obviously, not in form at the moment. And I mean, she's allowed to not be in form at some point as well, I suppose. But where exactly, according to you, did Sri Lanka go wrong in the ODI series in particular? Because it has slightly complicated things for them.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few issues. Obviously, many of them that have persisted over the last couple of years, but have kind of been papered over by the fact that one, Chabari has been in extended purple patch, and the other is that a few other batters have also kind of got into good form and started converting their starts, right? But issues such as the middle order, which hasn't been firing right throughout, persisted. Then you had the lack of wicket taking options for Sri Lanka, another issue. If I talk about the middle order, I think Nilakshi De Silva had been in form during that earlier part of the Women's Championship cycle, but hasn't really gotten too many opportunities with the bat of late, with the top 4 getting all the runs, right? So you've got Harshita, Chamari, Vishmi and Kavisha, who've been getting a lot of runs. So the likes of Nilakshi De Silva haven't gotten a lot of opportunities, and she doesn't seem to be in good form. Another player, Hasini Pereira, whose record is not great, to be honest, right? But Sri Lanka persisted with her, perhaps because she is that left-handed option in the middle order. Hasn't got a lot of runs, was involved in a really bad mix-up with Samara Vikrama in the second ODI, which Sri Lanka looked poised to chase down, right?
Tell me more. I want to know more about this mix-up. Was it a run-out mix-up? Was it like a kerfuffle? Were they swearing at each other, Estelle?
I think a lot of people were swearing at their screens. I don't know if they were swearing at each other though, because it went all. I mean, Sri Lanka won 170 for two, chasing 240, and they ended up losing by I think 10 or 18 runs. I'm not sure the exact
Hmm.
number, right? And it all started with that run out. Samara Vikrama gets to a ton. They'd been running well, but this miscommunication where they take Samara Vikrama came down the track for the second run, and Hasini Pereira just turned her down in the last moment. It was
Hmm.
unfortunate, and she didn't. Pereira didn't, continue with the chase, or she was dismissed
Hmm.
pretty much immediately after as well. So it wasn't perfect for her. So she's another one who's had a lot of issues, right? And with Sri Lanka, the problem is you've got the 11 out there, and particularly the batters. There aren't that many backup players, right?
Hmm.
In squad. I think they have one backup batter in that squad. They've got Nutyangana, who is a wicket keeper batter. So essentially, she is kind of a replacement for Anushka Sanjeevani. But other than that, they don't have spare batters in that squad. So that
Hmm.
is an issue. And secondly, the bowling. Like, I don't think we've discussed it on good areas at all, but definitely in some of the other pods that I've been on, we've spoken about how they've left out Inoka Ranavira and Oshadi Ranasinghe. Ranavira was in the ICC's T20 Team of the Year in
Hmm.
2023,
Wow,
and
that's not too long ago.
2024 she finds herself not in the Sri Lankan setup. So um, they are struggling a bit with the wicket taking options, and I think you have to give credit to Ireland as well, right? They batted really well.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a team that has not qualified for the T20 World Cup this time, right?
True.
And the way they batted right throughout the tour, whether it was the T20s or the ODIs, was just brilliant to watch. And they had contributions from everyone in that lineup. It wasn't just one or two players.
Yeah, we'll come to Ireland later. I have some notes on them as well, and I really enjoyed watching them play when they toured Pakistan. I reckon it was last year or something. So they did well in Pakistan as well. I reckon they even might have won a series. And maybe it's a thing. They are, Asian team slayers or something like that. Also, we've got Aniket Mohan and Sag in the comments. Go ahead and send your super chats as well, guys. Estelle and I can answer them for you, even if Jared isn't here. And Sag says that she loves Estelle and that she's a girl and this is not her being creepy. So thank you, Sag. I'm sure Estelle loves you back. All right, before we get to Ireland, because there's a lot of fun stuff over there, I actually want to talk about three Sri Lankan performers in particular with you. And they did well on this tour, like all three of them. Let's start with Harshita Samaravikrama. 86 or 45 in the first T20I, 65 or 44 in the second. And then she also scored 105 in the second ODI. She's a woman in form, and she was very, very impressive and played quite a major role in Sri Lanka's triumphant and historic Asia Cup campaign. Talk to me more about her.
Yeah, Harshita is one player who, to me, genuinely, it's such a treat to watch because she's so good at identifying what her strengths are. She's not a big
Hmm.
hitter of the ball, right? Like if you watch her, if you look at her, if you see a picture of her, she's not a big unit, right? She's tiny.
Hmm.
And she doesn't really have the power to clear the boundary consistently, right? But the way she's worked on her game and developed it in a way that she has her areas where she can go over the top, and she has other areas where she can find the boundary. And that's, I think, one of the biggest pluses or biggest positives you can take out of a cricketer is that they've worked on things that they need to work on and develop those areas so that they are of a certain standard right now, right? Like if you look at the Sri Lankan team right now, you could say she's Sri Lanka's number two batter. She's had
Yeah.
success in T20 cricket, which, I mean, if you watch her play, you wouldn't expect it to be her, the more successful format for her. But she's found a way to work around her limitations, and that's been great to watch. I'm just looking at her numbers right now, right? In T20 cricket, she's been kind of the queen of the chase for Sri Lanka in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. Um, she's got an average of 50 and a strike rate of 109 in chases alone. That is, I mean, her career average is 31, career strike rate is 99. So there is a big improvement from that to
Hmm.
what she is as a chaser. I think, particularly over the last 1.5 years, in
Yeah.
many of the games, Sri Lanka has been a really good chasing side. And one of the key reasons is that she's been someone who has been able to stay right through the end and really manage those chases. So it's really good to see because, um, you know, 3 years ago, she was promising but wasn't really delivering on that promise. But she's
Yeah.
finally found that kind of the sweet spot with how she plays her game.
Yeah, I mean, she's 26 now, so she is coming of age. That is quite a mature age for female cricketers, And this augurs extremely well for Sri Lanka because, at least in the T20Is, she was the Chamari replacement. She was opening
Mm.
with Vishmi, right? And she scored runs. So I think that is fantastic news. Also, Aniket Mohan is asking in the comments whether I will be covering Pakistan versus Bangladesh. Dude, I am covering Pakistan versus Bangladesh. I was at the ground today, literally came back home, jumped on this podcast with Estelle. So you can follow, like, on good areas, we'll probably end up covering the entire series once it's done. But if you want to like have test by test coverage and see all of my other stuff, you can follow me on Twitter or go watch our content on Pro Sports. Anyway, coming back to Sri Lanka and Ireland. Performer number 2. Vishmi Gunaratne, she became the first Sri Lankan ODI centurion who was not Chamari Atapattu in the first ODI. 101 of 98, and then, funnily enough, Harshita scored a 100 in the next one. But Vishmi, what I love about her, and I've actually been tracking her. She's the one I know most about, out of all of these girls. She's still a teenager, love that,
Mm.
about to turn 19, and her stock, Estelle, has been rising for a hot minute.
Yeah, absolutely. She's been fantastic. I think I told you guys couple of months ago maybe
Hmm.
about her adventures in the school's cricket arena. At 16
Yeah.
years old, she hit a she hit 400 in a 30 over game, and was fast tracked into the Sri Lankan system, made her debut I think in that same year.
Hmm.
But now you're beginning to see the consistency from her that you were looking for. She has been a slow starter for a long while, but I guess when you bat with Chamariyatapattu, sometimes you can afford to be a bit of a slow starter. I think with the Sri Lankans, in particularly these young players, a lot of it is mental, right? And once you
Hmm.
start scoring runs, once you start getting those, confidence boosting quick runs, that belief that you can do it is just it's planted and it keeps growing and growing, and that's what's happened. I mean, the three
Hmm.
names that you gave me, right? It's all three of them. Talent was never a question, but it is, using that talent to actually put performances out. So I mean, it's brilliant to watch. I'll be honest, like, maybe a year ago, if you had asked me about Vishmi Gunaratna, I would have told you I'm still on the fence because I felt
Hmm.
like it was too early that they brought her
Hmm.
into the side. But that persistence with her, the fact that they've kept persisting with her, has eventually paid off, right? And with two World Cups coming, one this year and one next
Hmm.
year, it's kind of the perfect time for her to get into form and get that consistency. I'll also add, by the way, I don't know how many people who are watching this know this, but she is the first centurion in limited overs cricket after Chamari.
Hmm.
But there is a test centurion. I don't think a lot of people know
Ah.
about it. 1998 Sri Lanka versus Pakistan. I think the only
Okay.
test for both teams.
Is this
Um,
the Kiran Baloch test?
I'm not too sure
Because,
about it,
yeah.
uh, but it was like one and done, right? Sri Lanka
Hmm.
haven't played any more tests. I don't think Pakistan have either. Chamani Seniviratna scored 100 in that game. So in limited overs cricket, yes, Vishmi and now Harshita
So
are the
they're
next
they're the
best.
first Sri Lankan female cricketers to score hundreds for Sri Lanka in international cricket who are not named Chamari. Am I correct over
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
Okay, well, that's quite a statistic, right? Personally, I mean, I feel Vishmi has the highest ceiling amongst all of these
Mm.
young players that Sri Lanka have got, in their arsenal. But Kavisha Dilhari, batting all rounder, is also a very, very valuable asset to have. And she's only 23, so there's time for her to grow even further. And she's had some really important performances for Sri Lanka off late in these recent successful times, right? Even in this tour, you look at her performances with the bat, and she's got 50s in a T20I and
Mm.
ODI, and then she had figures of 4 for 54 and 2 for 35 in the first two ODIs. She bowls both off break and leg break, if I'm not wrong. So how important is she in terms of balance and middle order for Sri Lanka going forward?
Oh, she's massively important. I think one of the few players who can clear the boundary quite easily in that middle order. That's one big area that Sri Lanka have been lacking, right? Over the years, you've got Chamari who can hit massive sixers, but you don't have too many others. Kavisha perhaps not as bigger hitter as Atapattu, but can also clear the boundary and score fast
Hmm.
in the death overs, which is like, I mean, the way the women's game is going now, it's going to be really important, right? And
Hmm.
of course, as a spin bowler, she's one of, I was talking about wicket taking options. She's one of Sri Lanka's key wicket taking options. Like, I mean, she's the one who Atapattu turns to when she
Hmm.
needs that wicket in the middle overs. And I mean, as you know, middle over wickets are critical, right? Particularly in the ODI game, right?
Yeah.
So she's played that role really well for Sri Lanka. I think sometimes you don't see the value of her batting because she doesn't get as many runs as some of the top
Hmm.
order batters do, but she's been excellent for Sri Lanka in the death. I think, another one who's kind of been earmarked as one for the future.
Hmm.
I think like the future is now, but
Yeah.
um, I remember in 2022, Atapattu was one who advocated strongly for her, saying that she should be in, franchise cricket. She's someone who does have that potential as well. So it's good to see all three of them really coming of age at a time when Sri Lanka need them to, like I said, with the World Cups.
Hmm.
And but unfortunately, I mean, as a supporter of Sri Lanka, one thing that I feel a bit sad about is that we had the kind of latter part of Atapattu's career,
Hmm.
and you have these three coming up. If they'd kind of if Atapattu was a few years younger, Sri Lanka could have really built into something
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, but the youngsters are coming to the fore now and they're kind of staking their claim. And even though Sri Lanka, did not have a successful tour out of the five limited overs
Mm,
games, they only managed to win two. But, we must not forget that they defeated England in England. And
mm,
then they also defeated South Africa in South Africa, if I'm not
yeah,
wrong. Who
yeah,
else did they defeat in this short little while? Of course, we know about the Asia Cup as well, India in the
yeah.
final, which was pretty much the most important moment in Sri Lankan women's cricket. But am I missing anyone in terms of
Yeah, so
series wins?
Yeah, so they've beaten New Zealand. I think
Yeah.
that was a series that kicked everything off, right,
Hmm.
at home. Like you mentioned, England, South Africa, and West Indies at home as well. So
Yeah.
had a had a few wins against opponents who they hadn't beaten in a long time.
Yeah.
New Zealand they'd never beaten in any format.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's been a crazy run.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel like they deserve lots of plaudits. And also, sure, this might seem like a step backwards after all of that success. But like you said, they can very easily automatically qualify for the ODI World Cup next year. And I
Mm,
feel like there are still some positive takeaways over here. Those three players are the most positive takeaways, right? Kavisha, Harshita, and Vishmi. Because in a world after Chamari, you need these girls to kind of lead from the
yeah.
front and take on that ownership. Okay, we've talked a lot about Sri Lanka. Time to give some airtime to Ireland as well because they've done massively well. Historic victory in the ODI series for them. They won it 2-1. And there were two Irish centurions that I want to talk
Mm.
about. Of course, Gabby Lewis scored a 75 ball 119 in the second T20I that Ireland managed to win. And then in the first ODI, Orla Prendergast, she first went unbeaten with the bat, 122 not out of 107 deliveries, and then also took 3 for 25 with the ball in what was a spectacular all round performance. Which one would you rate higher, Gabby Lewis's ton or Orla's all round? I don't even know how to describe it. Masterclass.
Yeah, I would say it's Ola because
Hmm.
she did it in a chase as well, right? And that
True.
game kind of, I think Sri Lanka would have thought it's dead and buried with 5 to 6 overs to go, but she just kept finding the boundary and some really clean hitting.
Hmm.
Um, she's she's also someone who people have been talking about for a few years now, right?
She's done really well. I've seen her
Yeah,
bat before and I like her.
yeah, and even with the ball,
Hmm.
um, that 3 for 25 included a wicket of Atapattu. I think it was a duck in that game. So massive wicket to start things off. She bowls,
Yep.
she's kind of nippy as well, right? And she's what, 22 years old. So
Hmm.
she's got a lot of years ahead of her. And it'll be really interesting to see where things go because, I mean, you don't get a lot of players like her, right? And i'm
Yeah.
i'm surprised she hasn't been in contention for franchise deals. The only thing probably is that Ireland is a full member nation, so
Hmm.
if they were an associate, maybe she would have got a gig at the WPL because she's that good. She's been impressing for a couple of years now.
WPL people, WBBL people, and the 100 women's
Yeah.
people. You guys should take a look into Orla Prendergast because I feel like she is definitely that quality of a player. She belongs to that tier of, high quality batting all rounders, right?
Mhm.
Because she is primarily a batter. But what a performance! Probably the performance of the series, really. And
Yeah.
it was better than Gabby's stun, which was also like phenomenal,
Yeah.
119 of 75. But what's interesting over here is that Gabby did not feature in the ODI series, right?
Mm.
Chamari did feature for Sri Lanka in the ODI series. Laura Delaney was absent for Ireland as
Mm.
well. So Ireland were actually not as, like, they were not at full strength. Sri Lanka in the ODI series pretty much were. So, bearing in mind that there were these absentees, is this like something that Sri Lanka will rue? Is this a series that kind of got away?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they feel that way because they would
Hmm.
have come into um, this tour expecting to win 5-0. Okay,
Hmm.
if I'm being realistic, they would have been expecting to win 5-0, but they're going home with two losses, most sorry, three losses, and most importantly, two ODI losses, which, like we
Yeah.
discussed before, are going to affect or could potentially affect their automatic qualification to the World Cup,
Hmm.
right? So they will, I think, be disappointed with the performances. But I mean, you have to give credit to Ireland, right? They were fantastic. Like you said, they didn't have two key players in the ODI series,
Hmm.
but they were fantastic right from the word go. Like I said, the batting was really good. They had contributions right throughout that batting order, low down the order. The bowling was good. The fielding, I thought, for the most part, was really good. So they were good all round. And I think that you get a lot of teams in the women's game that are reliant on one or two players, but they don't seem to be that team. They've got a lot of contributions from different players, and that's really good to see. Maybe one of their biggest achievements, because like I said, right,
Hmm.
this is their first appearance in the women's championship, and they won a series. And I think this also goes to show, like Sri Lanka, right? Sri Lanka have had 24 ODIs in the last 2 years. That is why they are improving. That is why you're seeing the
Hmm.
results that you're seeing against the bigger teams that they haven't beaten before. So Ireland
And
similarly,
and Sri Lanka went 555 days, is it? Without
close
playing
to two
cricket?
years. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
COVID, I mean, the turnaround has been so quick, and that the reason for that is the regular cricket, right? And Ireland
hmm.
are also showing that, like, they've had a lot of, I mean, they haven't played as many games as Sri Lanka yet in this cycle, but they've had more cricket than they would against higher quality opposition.
Hmm.
And that's bound to help them when they come
Yeah.
up against teams um like Sri Lanka, right? And it was really good to see. I think one of their biggest achievements, obviously, as someone who covers Sri Lanka cricket, it wasn't very pleasant to watch from that aspect. But I'm really glad that you have teams like Ireland coming up and being so competitive, right? It really makes you wonder why the World Cups aren't expanding. I mean, this year's
Yeah.
World Cup is going to feature only 10 teams, and
Hmm.
Ireland's not one of them, right?
Yeah.
Because they couldn't make it through the qualifier. So, um, I hope that they continue to be in the women's championship, and that more teams are added on, so that you will see them playing more. The more they play, they're going to get better, right?
Absolutely. I mean, exposure does wonders. We saw it with the Netherlands men's team, right? How good they got just by playing better teams. Same is the case over here with Ireland. It's an absolute shame that there are only 10 teams in the Women's T20 World Cup that's coming up in October. And I mean, if they expanded the men's T20 World Cup, it only makes sense to expand the women's game as well, especially when it can get far more competitive, in the women's circuit. But anyway, one thing that you mentioned, and I want to kind of elaborate or expand on, is that, we obviously talked about both Centurions, Gabby Lewis and Orla. But it's not like they were the only performance. There were performances all around the park. If you look at the second ODI, which Ireland won and then sealed the series 2-0, took an unassailable lead, keeper batter Amy Hunter scored 66,
Mm.
Leah Paul scored 81, Rebecca Stokel scored an unbeaten 53. So, walk me through this game. I obviously didn't watch it. What happened here? Right? Because the usual suspects didn't perform. These guys did, or these girls did. And do you think 255 was too high a target for Sri Lanka to chase, or did they just mess up and it was chaseable?
Well, 255 is one of the higher chases they would have had, right? I think they've
Hmm.
chased a couple of totals above that.
Yeah.
They were very much in the chase, like I mentioned, right? Harshita Samaravikrama was
Hmm.
batting really, really well, and then this massive collapse happened. So they were 2 for 172 when Harshita was dismissed, and then they folded for 240. Right? I think if they had managed to stay in, they would have chased that.
Hmm.
But again, like you have to give credit to Ireland, right? They were good in the field to effect that
They're a
run
really
out.
good fielding team, aren't they?
Yeah,
And Sri
they are.
Lanka will have moments of brilliance and then will also be kind of scrappy other times, right? If I have I read that correctly?
No, no, you have, and I think Harshita Samaravikram has unfortunately been one of the
Hmm.
main
Yeah.
culprits,
I
and
mean,
I'm
she
hearing,
overcame those demons in the final of the Asia
yeah,
Cup. Like she came out a winner. Her mental strength, like I
yeah,
salute.
yeah, but I'm hearing that she has a tear in the webbing of one of her hands,
Hmm.
and she also had a fracture in one of her fingers
Oh,
a couple of months ago. So
yikes.
that is possibly playing on her mind, but she's been one of Sri Lanka's better fielders, so that's why it's disappointing to see a few chances going down off her. um, but I mean, you're right, like very temperamental fielding unit. They were very, very good during the Asia Cup, barring those few dropped
Hmm.
catches.
Yeah.
um, but they'll need to, step that up, because you can't afford to. I mean, we saw in this tour, right? You can't afford to, even if it costs you 5-10 runs, it could end up being, the winning margin. So they're going to have to step it up. I've said it before on this pod as well about the mental, like,
Yeah.
side of things. It's like with these players, I can see it is a massive deal, like, the shoulders dropping, things like that, when a
Hmm.
few misfields go around.
The body
So they'll have,
language.
yeah, body language. I mean, I'm not a body language expert, but like, you can kind of tell that, there is certainly a kind of that mental side of things, especially for a player like Harshita, right? I mean, she's
Hmm.
all her life she's been a good fielder. Suddenly she puts a couple of catches down, and that
Hmm.
turns into 3 catches and 4 catches and five
Yeah.
catches and over a number of games. So it's definitely something they'll have to work on.
It's infectious, right? Like we've seen it with other players as well. Also, Muki in the comments is saying Sri Lankan women look too reliant on Chamari Atapattu. I disagree. If anything, recent times have proven to us that they are not overly reliant on her, and the change of guard is happening. And if you look at this series, right, Chamari didn't even perform, but other people did, and I don't think the reason Sri Lanka lost is because Chamari didn't perform. There were other reasons over here, and I mean it is a massive coup for Ireland, an
Yeah.
ODI series victory versus Sri Lanka at home. So just on a closing note for Ireland, describe the magnitude of this victory to me, and do you see them becoming like a top 10 team, let's say in the next 5 years?
I think it a lot will depend on the surfaces they play on. I
Hmm.
was really, really impressed with the pitches, right? I think
Hmm.
someone had tweeted out about getting all this money and ending up with a pitch like the one we saw in New York at the Men's World Cup. And then you have like
Yeah.
some amateur, or some like, club cricketer plus a few amateurs preparing tracks where there's a lot of runs. And it's
Hmm.
good, it is good for the women's game, right? You want to see high scoring games. You don't want to really see too many of those 120 all out, or teams
Hmm.
struggling to get to 100. So I think if conditions are like the conditions, obviously they are preparing there, are good, and they get to play a lot more international cricket against higher ranked teams, there's no reason why they shouldn't become a
Hmm.
top 10 team, because they've kind of got the talent, right? If you look at that
Yeah.
lineup, like you said, there are a lot of, I mean, and there are a lot of youngsters coming through as well, right?
And I
So
think the Ireland women's team precedes the men's team. I might be wrong over there, but that's my memory of it.
I think so as well, right?
Yeah,
I'm not
I
sure.
think
I'm not
so.
sure.
Someone in the
Yeah.
comments can maybe correct us. And if you haven't caught the live session, you can let us know in the YouTube comments or something. But yeah, I mean, I only wish the best for Ireland's men's and women's teams. I've visited the country twice. I absolutely love the people. And I also am a big fan of their cricket, like generally as well. It's a team you always kind of want to root for. And
Yeah.
whenever they do well, you're happy for them. I'm sure, like, even though Sri Lanka has lost, there is a part of you deep down inside where you're like, okay, well, good for Ireland.
Yeah, I think it's a funny one because you always want the underdog to do well,
Hmm.
but do you want the underdog to do well against your team is a question. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's great for women's cricket as well to have a
yeah,
strong Ireland, because you
absolutely.
want more teams competing hard, and you don't want that kind of top three being a separate, at a separate level. You
Hmm.
want everyone to be competing. So uh, I mean, while I am disappointed that Sri Lanka lost and couldn't kind of
Hmm.
seal their position in the World Cup next year, I'm happy that you know you saw something that's encouraging about a team like Ireland.
Absolutely. And just before we end this podcast, you mentioned that Sri Lanka have the West Indies and New Zealand coming up, ODI series, and that will kind of give them an opportunity to seal their automatic qualification for the ODI World Cup next year. How many games per team, and how many do they
No,
need to win out of those games?
no.
No.
So they're done. They're done.
Okay,
But
they're
West
done.
Indies, they're done. They have played their 24 games. They're
Oh, so
done.
they're relying on other teams and
Yeah,
their results.
yeah.
That's not a great position to be
Yeah.
in, Estelle.
So at the moment they are in fourth position, and India is
Hmm.
fifth. India is through obviously as a
Yes.
automatic qualifier with
Hmm.
as hosts, and then at number six you have New Zealand, who have 6 games remaining against Australia and India. So that's the
Okay,
tricky part.
that's they.
And
I
then
don't think they can win many out of those because New
yeah, I
Zealand's
think they need
trajectory has gone down.
yeah they need, I believe, 2 wins to stay in. So they're still within the qualifications, right? They're at number six. And then you have West Indies, who need 4 wins out of 6 games. They've got 3 games against Bangladesh and 3 against India again, and
Ooh,
Bangladesh, who've got West Indies and India. So it's not going to be easy, but like I said, mathematically, it's still possible that Sri Lanka get bumped out of the top six,
yeah.
right? So, I mean, you never know the way results have gone. Like, no one was expecting this series result, but I mean, in the end, it was 2-1 to Ireland. So anything can happen. At the moment, they look kind of likely to go through, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, no, thanks for spelling that out for both me and all of our viewers and listeners. So now we know exactly what Sri Lanka require to automatically qualify for the ODI World Cup next year. And based on these things that you've just told me, I would put my money on Sri Lanka going ahead because the other results seem a bit unlikely. But anyway, that wraps up this episode of Overthrows or Good Areas Live. You guys can call it what you want because it's going to be really random here on. And just a quick reminder for everybody, you can go to goodareas.co and bookmark that webpage. That can prove to be your one-stop shop for all the work that we do as part of our team, whether it be written content, podcasts, or videos. We'll see you guys soon enough whenever there's something to talk about. Some people from our team will jump on a live video and we'll record for you, and you will be alerted a little prior. So I'll promise you that, okay? Well, anyway, thanks to everyone in the comment section, and thank you to you, Estelle, for taking out the time. This is when you play your the ad. Goodbye.
If you are following my work, we know that you are a
Come
true
on.
cricket sadist and you need your hit every day. And sometimes, sadly, there is actually no cricket to watch. So how about if someone made a very fun game that you could use for the moments when there is no on-field action? Welcome to Hit Wicket, a strategic game of cricket which isn't about slamming your finger on the screen very fast. You work out what works best based on how cricket actually works. Dot balls lead to wickets, 1s and 2s to 4s and 6s. So there is no way you can bowl a great Yorker every ball or smash 3 6s at the beginning of your innings. This is proper cricket, yet it still has some gaming powers in there as well. Hit Wicket is about playing, but also building and managing your team. You are the batter, bowler, owner, coach, and captain. It's your dream. No ads, just cricket. So download Hit Wicket today, because this is a cricket game made for you and supported by major cricket nerds. If you have a passion for sports and aspire to work in the industry, I invite you to explore my course, Fans with Laptops. This program is designed to equip you with the knowledge and skills necessary to excel in sports journalism. Fans with Laptops is a test match course tailored to the digestible T20 world. Embrace your nerdish obsession for sports and unlock your potential by enrolling in Fans with Laptops.